Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Joy Channel. Every so often, I want to come in here and bring you some loving life hacks. As your life coach and CJO, Chief Joy Officer, I think it's really important that we tackle some really healthy life conversations. And so that's actually what we're going to jump into today. I'm just going to bring these quick little snippets every now and again to allow you to really step into the version of you that you want to be. So today's conversation is all around curiosity. I want to actually start by breaking down that word itself. Cure is the first part of the word curiosity. And so I love to use this little saying of curiosity is the cure. It has truly, truly become one of the most powerful tools in my own personal and client transformation toolbox. And that is staying open and staying curious to possibilities, to conversations. And so today, I really want us to hone in on curious conversations. Right now, our world is really, and I think it's been here for a while, we're in this space where we're having a lot of really tough conversations. We're seeing a lot of division in the world. We're seeing a lot of edges being pushed. We're seeing a lot of lines being drawn. And now more than ever, I think the world could use a bit more curiosity rather than simply just taking a side, holding on tight, and trying to force other people to believe what you believe. What makes us unique in this world, in this space, is that we all get to have different views and different things and have beautiful, curious conversations around it. We don't all want to be the same. We don't all want to think the same, and we don't all want to navigate life the same. Otherwise, we'd just be a bunch of robots roaming around this beautiful earth that is meant to be so unique and so different. So it's important that we hold on to our beliefs, but be open and curious to shifting and changing in ways that feel good and feel true to our own natural being and values. So I want to just lend up a little bit of a few tips in moving into the new year with curious energy and allowing ourselves to be more welcoming in conversation, right? Can we all just agree to be a little more curious in conversation? Because I truly believe that curiosity is the cure. Curiosity allows us to heal so many of our own internal chaos. It allows us to cure the relationships that we have with other people that may have a bit of dissonance or happening. And so I want to allow us to be curious this year. In fact, that's one of my words for 2022. So here's kind of what it looks like. And I want to offer this up. If you want to grab a pen, piece of paper, press pause. I'm going to go through a few of the curious conversation tips that I have for you today. And hopefully you can try these on for size in conversation and just see how your relationships grow using these curious conversation tips rather than going into conversation as a great debate, which so many of us are. We don't have to be on the debate team. We don't have to debate everything in life. And I think for me, where the world is feeling a bit divided is we're just trying to prove that we're right. We don't need to prove that we're right. We just get to believe what we believe and we don't have to prove anything. The beautiful thing is when we get to actually open up, create connection through curious conversation. So here are some beautiful, beautiful questions that we can use in conversation to be curious and truly just expand in our relationships with others. You can use this in relationship in conversation with complete strangers, but where I found it thrive the most is in conversations with people that I care about, people that I want to go deeper into relationship with, but maybe we don't always share the same views on things that are popping up in our lives. These are also some curious conversation tips that you can use with yourself in your own personal growth. So let's dive right in. Number one, the number one question that you could start with, there's so many different ones, but I'm just going to tap into a few today, is I've been thinking about blank. I've been thinking about blank and wondering if you'd be willing to share your feelings on it. All right? That's the first one. Or try this. I've been thinking about blank and wondering if we could have an open conversation about it, have an open chat about it. Because the first thing that we want to do is create permission and safety, right? We want to create this permissioning of, is this something that you and I can move through together? Knowing that the intention of conversation is always so important. Before you even engage with that first question, I've been thinking about blank and wondering if we could chat about it. I want you to ask yourself, what's my intention for this conversation? And if the intention is for you to change their mind or prove that you are right, let's stop right there. We've got some work to do. But if the intention is to maybe grow or expand, see new perspective, maybe create a relationship in which it's safe to talk about anything. I know I have several relationships like that in my life where we can talk about anything. It's very unfiltered and it feels so, so nourishing to know that whatever conversation, we can have it. And I want more relationships like that, don't you? All right, so the first thing we're going to do is really create that safe permissioning space. We're going to ask that opening question. And then once this person is shared, it's really important that we work on our listening skills. I know this sounds so basic. I'm not trying to be a teacher here, but it's really important that once we have been given the green light, the acceptance of, hey, here's the question. So you're going to ask the question, right? And then you're going to just be quiet until they're done speaking. Almost allow the conversation on their end to come to a complete stop. Your goal is to be so present that your mind isn't thinking about what you're going to say next, right? Your turn is coming. Your goal is to be fully present, that you don't interrupt them, that you allow them to say, because remember, you asked the question, you're curious. All right. So we're listening. And at the end, when there's no more chatter coming from that person's end, you're going to do number 2, which is, I hear you. I hear you. And maybe even, I hear you. Thanks for sharing that. I hear you. Thanks for sharing that. Really validating that you've listened. We all want to be heard and we all want to be seen. That you've listened and that you're grateful that they shared. I hear you. Thanks for sharing that. Did you notice that I didn't say, you're right, you're wrong, why do you feel that way? That's crazy. I would never. It's not loaded with judgment at all. It's acknowledgement and gratitude. That allows the curious conversation to continue, right? So then number 3, we're back to permissioning. Would you mind if I shared my feelings on that? Right? Would you mind if I share my feelings on that? Or are you open to hearing another view? Are you open to hearing another view? Because when you ask that question, if they're not in a space where they're willing to hear another point of view, then that's a signal that that conversation may be complete. Maybe they don't want to hear another view. Otherwise, we're just going to go down the path and then we're going to get back into that debate club. And then the energy is just going to be so off. And 9 times out of 10, everybody leaves feeling like, oh, that didn't feel very good. Right? So I hear you. Thanks for sharing. Do you mind if I share my feelings on that? Or are you open to hearing another view? When the answer is yes, then you share your view. Then you share your view and you get your time. Then you hope that they learn to be a good listener, right? And feel the permission in your body to go, if it's okay with you, I just need you to listen until I'm done, and then we can continue the conversation. and then I'm happy to answer, any questions that you have or whatever. It's not an interview. Remember, it's conversation, a curious conversation. If it feels good for you to be interrupted, that's totally fine. But if you need some space to just speak it all out, then they get to be a good listener. All right. And then you're done having that beautiful chat. And again, it comes back to thanks for listening. Thanks for allowing me to share my heart with you. Thanks for allowing me to share my view with you. I feel heard, right? Now, a couple of extra things is it's probably not necessarily always going to be this flowy or those exact things. Or you could be totally honest with somebody and say, hey, I just learned a really cool technique online that I love to try because I'm really working on growing in conversation with people, having meaningful conversations with people, but I want to make sure that that feels good. So can I try this process with you? Go with somebody that you trust starting out, right? Don't just like try this on your coworkers in the break room. Go with somebody that you trust first until that feels familiar and you've built safety and trust in your own body using this process. And then you can start getting curious and putting your feelers out into other spaces in the world. Now, you're probably going to hear things that you don't agree with. That's the whole point of curious conversation, right? So you're probably going to hear things that you don't agree with. And this is a lot of times where we have to be super cautious that we don't start judging, blaming, shaming, guilting, doing all these things, because it's not about proving it right. It's about having beautiful conversations and growing our relationships. So here's the number one tip on this. Learn how to have conversations where you don't feel the need to change your mind, right? And maybe you will change your mind. And that's even more beautiful when we go, wow, I never thought of it like that before. Wow. And that happens to me pretty frequently. I'm like, wow, I never thought of it like that before. Thanks so much for sharing. So rather than saying like, yeah, you're right, or no, you're wrong, rather than going right, wrong, yes, no's, when somebody shares something and it doesn't quite feel like your truth or your values or your things, right? Again, we can get permission to share how we're feeling on it if it feels safe for that person, or you can simply just say, you know what, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that before, right? Or that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that perspective, if that's true for you. And maybe it would feel good to say something like, can you tell me more about that? Because if you don't understand why they could ever think like that, how they could ever feel like that, remember, you haven't walked in their shoes for 20, 30, 40 years, right? You don't know what their background is. You don't know what their wounds are. You don't know what values they were taught. You don't know what stories they chose to accept or decline from society. You don't know what news station they listen to. You don't know the whole story, right? So before you judge or before you throw projections of your own insecurities and or other things out of people, just get more curious. Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me more about that? Or can you tell me what other things led you to feel like this? Led you to have this view? Can you tell me what other things led you to have this view or these feelings? And get curious. Again, allow them to speak. And then when they're done, we go back to thank you so much for sharing. I hear you. Thank you so much for sharing, right? And it can end with gratitude. Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing. What else should we talk about? That's kind of like a smooth transition into like, I've closed the books on this one. Let's grow somewhere else, right? And so I really truly believe that curiosity is the cure for so much of us, so much of what we're moving through personally and professionally. And I invite you to move through these steps. I've been thinking about or wondering about. I'm wondering if you'd share your feelings on. Can we have an open chat about? And then I hear you. Thanks for sharing. Mind if I share my feelings about it? Are you open to hearing another view? Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing with me. Or interesting, I hadn't heard of that before. I hadn't thought of that perspective. Can you tell me more about that? And what other things have led you to believe this? Curious conversation. Let's allow ourselves to expand this year and have curious conversations that really nourish our souls and grow our spirits. Yeah. I hope you use these things. Leave comments below. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know where it's helping. I really think we have the opportunity to do incredible things if we just get more curious around conversation. Thanks for watching. I can't wait for you to tune in again next week. Have a great day. Go out into the world, shine your light bright, and live a limitless life. See you soon.